Coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada, this is The Tracie Austin Show, the program that covers paranormal phenomenon, the supernatural, the highly strange, from the far corners of the world, with three-time Telly Award winner TV host, researcher, and author, Tracie Austin. And now, leading tonight's program, here's Tracie.
And a very good evening to everyone listening to our show tonight. It's great to be back with you this fine Sunday evening as we're broadcasting live from our KGRA studio, Hudson Valley, New York, and Salt Lake, Utah. I want to thank you, first of all, for inviting me into your home tonight, once again, or wherever you happen to be listening to our show at this hour, around this very paranormal planet of ours. As you know, it is. This is the Tracie Austin Show, and I'm your host, Tracie Austin. Now, I just want to give out a shout out here to one of my sponsors, who is Attitude Coffee. And they've given me my own blend of coffee called the Queen's Beans. So because you're watching the show tonight and you're listening to the Tracie Austin Show, I'm going to give you 10% off your first bag. So all you need to do is go to attitude.coffee, look for the purple label, and voila, you'll have 10% off your first bag. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And on with the show. Now, let me start off, first of all, tonight's show by asking you, our audience, have you ever heard of what's known as the Brooklyn Bridge abduction of 1989? It's a case that is known to some degree, but has been very much suppressed for some 32 years. Until tonight, that is, because my guest, Yancy Spence, is sharing the details about this very incident that he was witness to back in 1989. It's an interview exclusive tonight with my friend Yancy Spence that he calls The Day Manhattan Stood Still. Now, Yancy Spence is an author, a researcher, conceptual artist whose works have been displayed in venues in Washington, D.C. and New York. He's been a guest speaker on international broadcast satellite radio and consulting researcher to the Linda Cortiel abduction. And his written works include The Day Manhattan Stood Still and a 3-year investigation of the days after Manhattan stood still. Well, before we bring Yancy onto the show tonight, I want to read you a little bit of this case that was written about some time ago in Publishers Weekly. And it's this extraordinary case that we're talking about tonight that was written about by the late Bud Hopkins in his book in 1996 called Witnessed. And I quote, "It's 3 a.m. on November the 30th, 1989. On the Lower East Side of Manhattan, a motorcade carrying international diplomats, including a UN representative of the highest standing, stalls out and comes to a halt beneath the FDR Drive. An enormous reddish-orange UFO looms above an apartment building, where a pretty housewife is seen by the members of the motorcade to float out of a 12th-story window, accompanied by 3 grey aliens and transported up into an awaiting spaceship in a blazing blue-white light. Hopkins contends that the Brooklyn Bridge incident is the most witnessed UFO abduction of all time," end quote. And my guest, Yancy Spence, was there that very night to witness this incredible event with many, many other people. So incredible, in fact, that numerous people in their cars on the Brooklyn Bridge and on the streets of Manhattan thought that they were seeing a movie being made. That's how incredible this case is, folks. And later in the show, we're going to be opening up the phone lines for you to call in and ask Yancy your questions. That will be during the last 30 minutes or so of the show. I will give out the number a little later. So have your questions ready for Yancy. Well, let's delve into this phenomenal incident tonight with my friend and guest, Yancy Spence. How are you, my friend?
Fine, Trace. It's lovely to see you again.
And it's lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday night to share your side of the story of this incredible event that you and I have actually been talking about for the last 17 years. Can you believe it?
Yes, I can.
So I've been wanting Yancy to do this show and for me to interview him for the longest time. I'm so glad he agreed to do it. So I'm so glad you agreed to do it, Yancy. It's 32 years ago since this happened. Incredible event. And I just want to also say a very happy birthday for yesterday as well.
Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Were you 21 again?
Yes. Third time.
For the third time.
Yeah.
I know how that goes.
I have to tell you, you were the one that printed the days after Manhattan stood still for the first time. Nobody printed that until you did. I wrote that especially for the show you were doing and wanted to put the day Manhattan stood still on the show. And I said, well, can I write up a little article about what I learned? And that was the days after Manhattan stood still. And you were the only one who ever put that up.
Wow. Well, there you go. There you go. And it's important that it's important I did that. So we're going to dive into this at the very beginning, Yancy, because there's so much to talk about here. November the 30th of 1989. It was a Thursday. And this extraordinary event happened at 3 a.m. And you remember every little detail of it, don't you?
Yes, but it was like a time capsule. It took about a year or two to remember the whole thing completely until I realized the moment that they all were brought back. I knew that Linda Cortile was taken. I didn't know who she was when I saw her. I thought that she was out of Disney Studios with a costume. She had on a white gown that was unbelievable. That's why I thought it was a movie. This white gown was incredible, and her hair was sticking out like it was laying on water. It was really strange. It was like, the way the hair looks when it's laying on the surface of water. That's what it looked like as she was going up, escorted by these three ETs.
Well, we're going to get into this, obviously, because that is the story of Linda being taken. But at the time of the morning, at that time at 3 a.m., you were in the offices of the New York Post building where you worked, along with several other workers, weren't you, Yancy? What was your position there? What was going on at that time?
When I saw this event, I was coming back from Brooklyn over the Manhattan Bridge, and the truck died out. I was in the left lane, and I knew if I wanted to get out of the truck to see who was going to come up behind me and hit me, because I figured I just stalled out and the rest of the traffic would keep going and pass me by. I didn't want to get out on the side where you go onto the superstructure of the bridge, so I let the truck drift over into the right lane. Both lanes were going Manhattan bound at the time. So the truck slowly came to a halt in the right lane, and I looked in the side view mirror, and all the people that were on the bridge in their cars and trucks and cabs were getting out. The trucks and cars slowed down, and I thought I was passing out because the lights went out and they all slowed down. That's the beginning.
Right. Well, listen, I have not been to Manhattan, and especially at 3 a.m. in the morning, but I imagine that most people are sleeping. But if it's anything like Las Vegas, where I am, it's busy with traffic and people, right?
Yeah. New York is a 24-hour town, that's for sure. I think I showed you a picture of all the buildings that were lit up in Lower Manhattan.
Right. Well, I'm going to pull those up in a second here, but I want to ask you, Yancy, what was the general atmosphere like that morning in the building where you worked? But you were actually coming back from taking someone home, weren't you, in your vehicle?
To Brooklyn. I was coming back, That's when the truck died on the bridge, and I saw this whole event, which I thought was a movie being made. It's strange the things that go through your head. As I was watching this, I said to myself, wow, this director's got a lot of clout. He got him to turn out all the lights in Manhattan. That's the thing
Wow.
in my head. That you don't think what it is. Wow, I said this director's really got a lot of pull. He got him to shut out all the lights in Manhattan to make this movie, which sounds totally nuts, but that's just what I was thinking.
Right, exactly. This is a beautiful scene here of Manhattan. And I know that Yancy wanted me initially to show this because he was talking about, how many potential witnesses could have actually seen this incident that night. And as you can see, that's a beautiful shot there of Manhattan.
And
So,
New York, I mean, but the New York Post is that building down on the bottom of the picture.
okay, so that's the New York Post where Yancy worked. And what Yancy is talking about here is this. This was Linda and three beings that were going up into the shaft of light that was coming from the craft. So a large saucer-shaped craft appeared over an apartment building where three grey beings transported themselves off the craft, all in a fetal position, I had heard, and through a closed window of a 12th-story apartment building where a woman, namely Linda Corteil, a pseudonym name for the last name, was living there at the time. So tell us what happened, Yancy, and this is Linda's building. This is where it all happened that night. So tell us what happened, Yancy.
Well, the other picture wasn't a really good representation because when they first appeared, they were like balls rolled up, and the further they got up in the light, they unfolded, and you could see them being pulled up by their midsection like this. And that was so strange because they unrolled. They were like balls. They unrolled in a position like this, and they were pulled up by their midsections. So I thought they were on cables and they were making a movie. That's what you think. I mean, you don't think that these things are being floated up into a craft.
Exactly. So this beam of light appeared down from this craft with the three beings in it. One was initially by her head, one by her feet, and one underneath her, as you can see. It doesn't really give a good depiction of them in a fetal position, obviously, because this isn't what that shows, but it gives a good idea of what people saw early in the morning. Now, you were on Manhattan Bridge, weren't you, when you saw this, which is this shot right here.
Correct.
Right there on the bridge. Now, how many cars were there on that bridge that night, Yancy, would you say?
In the side view mirror, I would say there were 10, 15 cars behind me.
Right. And of course, when this thing showed itself, all of the lights obviously went out in Manhattan.
They did. All the cars stopped. Not only Manhattan, in Brooklyn, Staten Island, as far as I could see, all the lights were out. It was a major blackout. So I cannot believe that our radar did not pick it up. But, what do they call it? Giant killer that watches our country as a shield to protects us. I can't believe that it wasn't seen, especially in the major airports, did not notice the blackout. And the pilots, you could have seen this from space. That's how blacked out everything was.
Wow. Did you ever follow up with the aviation people to find out if, there wasn't, or the radar people, if this thing was tracked on radar, Yancy?
No. The only thing that got me interested into this was seeing a show on TV where they mentioned a sighting in Manhattan along with the Travis Walton sighting, the Betty and Barney Hill sighting. And I had never heard of a sighting in Manhattan. So I turned around to see what they were talking about. And I saw the lights on the windows. And for years, I was having repetitive dreams of seeing lights on a window. I couldn't figure out where they were, what building it was, what it was all about. But for years, I was having repetitive dreams of a light in the window. And as soon as I saw that on TV, I knew that was the building and what I had seen.
Right.
And I said to my wife, Sue, so this is what I saw. And Yeah, yeah, and she kept walking. You can imagine how rough it could be on a marriage if the husband says, you know, honey, I saw three aliens abduct a woman into a spaceship, and I think I could prove it because I know enough people saw it with me. I didn't see this in a bubble, and
Absolutely.
right, and I went ahead and I found people that could verify what I saw that I knew were there, just for the sake of proving to my wife that, you know, I didn't blow a mental gasket. I saw what I saw. So I
Right.
figured if I brought enough witnesses together, it would help.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Linda, I'm sure, was obviously very aware of her abduction, wasn't she? Because she talked about it at various lectures at MUFON, so she must have been aware she was being taken.
I think she only became aware of abductions after she went under hypnosis with Mr. Hopkins. I don't
I
think she
see.
had conscious memory. Mine was conscious memories. I never gone under hypnosis. Bud kind of got a little upset with me because I wouldn't go under hypnosis. But I told him, you know, there's no reason for me to. I remember everything very well, so why mess it up with hypnosis? But people like Dave Jacobs don't believe what you're saying unless you say it under hypnosis. So it's a catch-22 when it comes to researchers, you know.
Right. You didn't need any hypnosis because you remembered everything consciously.
Yes, it took a little while to put the pieces together, and other men at work helped me. Like when I remembered the night that it happened was because these limousines, there were like 20 limousines, which Mr. Hopkins didn't know about. These were the limousines from the Security Council of the UN. So every member of the Security Council and their entourage in these 20 limousines saw this event. It's buried in their memory.
Right. There has to be lots of witnesses, actual witnesses that night, Yancy. Do you know offhand how many?
Well, this is also very tricky. I had to make some moral decisions. Do I have the right to upset somebody's life, like telling them, you know, I think you saw something and you're dealing with repression and you don't know it? And a couple of the men who know that, you know, I don't kid around and where I'd say something like this normally started thinking about what I said and where they were and what they experienced that morning. So they started to remember on their own, and they had the courage to go see Mr. Hopkins. So Mr. Hopkins has the testimony of at least three other men that I know that were taken.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, we can only talk about the witnesses that came forward. I'm sure there's, you know, who knows how many others there were out that night that's or in early hours of the morning who saw that and
That's
have
what
not come forward.
that's what I was trying to say, Tracie. Do I have a right to go over to a man that I know was there and tell him, listen, you have memories repressed of an event that once you find out what you saw, it's going to really turn your world upside down, which it does.
Right.
And the men that did come forward, it turns out the three of them all were taken along with Linda. They all had physical traces on their bodies. One guy had
Wow.
wet and sandy shoes. The other one had a sunburn. What was the other? Someone had burns on their hands. I don't know what that's from, but I think
Mm.
if you put up a fight with these entities, a way they have of keeping you from hurting them, I think, is to give you some burns, or maybe when they touch you or grab you or show some kind of force, they burn you. Because both these gentlemen had burns on their hands, and when they went to the doctor to find out what it might be, the doctor said, "Well, maybe you touched some chemicals at work or something like that," because they didn't know why they had burns on their hands.
Or if they have sand on their shoes, did they go to some beach in a sunny place?
That's exactly what they did. I don't know if it was sunny. It was dark out, but they were all taken to a beach, according to the men that I spoke with, and according to Bud Hopkins' book, Witness. They were all
Mm-hmm.
taken to the beach. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, these gentlemen said they were taken to a beach.
Right. Well, I want to pull up this photograph again here, Yancy, because this is, like I said before, this is the photo that you in particular wanted me to show of all the buildings lit up at night, because you said it shows just how many potential witnesses there could have been to this event that morning. And with light facing to every light facing to the left, 180 degrees, that would be all of Staten Island and beyond, and all of Brooklyn, wouldn't
Correct.
it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, like many cases of UFOs hovering, the magnetic field that's generated from these objects knocks out the electricity in the area, or, to a vehicle or a number of vehicles in the area. And this was the case during that event that night to all of the cars on Brooklyn Bridge, you said it was, or was it Manhattan, or both?
All the neighborhood, Manhattan Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, according to Janet Kimball. All the limousines were stopped on South Street down at the post, which you can see in that picture. So all the traffic was stopped. It's not like some cars weren't stopped. They all were.
Okay. So let me ask you this. The police, did anybody think of calling the police? Not that the police could have done anything, of course, but was that a thought? Did anybody suggest a call?
That's another thing. After I saw this on the Manhattan Bridge and the lights came back on and people were getting back in their cars that were out of their cars, and I started up my truck and I started to drive, and I said to myself, whatever that was, whatever the heck that was, it'll be in the paper or on the news because everybody saw it. But before I drove 10 feet, I forgot the whole thing like it never happened.
That is very strange how that happens, isn't it?
Yes, that was the most disturbing thing to me, that I could have this buried for 11 and a half years and not know it. And it was so intense when I saw it, it just doesn't make sense not to be able to remember it.
Right. This was such an incredible scene that, as you said, people literally thought there was a movie being made on the streets, and that these beings were actually walking on the street, weren't they? People thought they were people in costume and part of a movie set, but they were beings actually walking on the street.
Outside the doors where the trucks back in, across the street, there's a park. And one of the witnesses, a gentleman named Bobby, came out of the bay doors and walked across the street because he saw the light. He wanted to know what was going on, and he walked across the street, and there he saw three beings, and they started to come towards him, and he turned around to go back into the building because he didn't know what they were. He thought they were making a movie and they were going to holler at him for being in the movie when he shouldn't be out there. So he turned around to come back in the building, and another gentleman had walked out from the bays and saw this action happening, and these three things were following Bobby. He said to him, listen, I don't know what you characters want, but this guy works here and you got to leave him alone. But he was taken along with Bobby, they were both taken from right outside the bays of the building.
Wow.
Another witness ran up to the top of the sixth floor. That's how you could judge how long it was. Time was very warped. I mean, it was manipulating. And the only way I could figure out how long it was he ran up 6 flights of stairs, which is actually 12 flights of stairs, to get up to the roof from where he was taken. When he went up to the top of the roof and came out of the roof up on the building, he was taken from there. And the other gentleman, I don't know where he was taken from, but his Rolls Royce was on South Street.
Right. Well, we're not going to say who this gentleman was with the Rolls Royce at the moment. Obviously, it's a United Nations person. And he was a very important part of this event that night. It includes a limousine procession that was there in Manhattan that morning, transporting this high-ranking diplomat, a Secretary General from the United Nations in a limousine. Now, like I said, I don't want you to say who it is for the moment, just yet, Yancy, but give us the details about that procession, and why was a United Nations diplomat in a limousine procession early hours of that morning, do you think? I mean, is this a typical occurrence in Manhattan that time of a morning?
No, what was going on, but what Bud Hopkins reported was there was a late night session, closed session of the Security Council, because this was just about the time, actually it was the time when the Berlin Wall was coming down. So they were discussing all kinds of things that were going to happen once the Berlin Wall came down. That was the reason they had this late night session at the UN. But what I can't understand is, how did these entities know that there was going to be a procession of the Security Council on South Street at that time to stop them?
Well, these beings are kind of like that, aren't they? They're aware of everything that's going on. They're so advanced.
I don't know if they can manipulate time to go forward or to go backward in order to know. How would you know that these representatives are going to be there? I mean, they probably didn't even know they were going to be there. If they were having a late night session, how would they know what time it was going to end and they would be on South Street?
I think they knew. I think they knew. You know, and I remember Bud talking about this at conferences, Yancy, and saying it's as if these beings had put on a show to show what they can do and that nobody could stop it, that it was going to happen anyway.
It was one hell of a show, I'll tell you that.
Well, let's have a look at some of these photographs that you so kindly sent our way. Here we're looking at beautiful Manhattan with...
that white building is New York Post.
Okay, so down to the right, that is New York Post, where you used to work. And when did you retire from there, Yancy?
2016.
Okay, so 2016, so a little ways back. And this one here, beautiful shot. I love this.
It's also the New York Post right in the middle, right after the grass.
Okay, so the New York Post there. And then this is the Manhattan Bridge.
Correct. That's just about where my truck stopped.
Okay. Was there pandemonium on that bridge when all of the lights went out and the car engines stopped? Just talk to us about the scene of what you experienced there.
Well, what really shook me up was when these people were watching what I was watching. If I can go in detail as to what my recollections were, there are certain parts that I'd like to go into hypnosis just to fill in the gaps, but basically, what I remember first seeing was a red beam of light, a very razor-thin beam of red laser coming across Lower Manhattan. I thought it was being shown from Brooklyn, and the Navy Yard was testing some kind of laser. That was the first thing I remember seeing. Then I remember an arc of lights. You know, I think Westbury or up New York, they show a crescent form of lights. That was very close. It was a crescent of lights. I think you've probably seen it, or your guests, your people who are watching have seen that picture of a crescent of lights.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, not only was it a crescent, but as it was moving counterclockwise, at certain intervals, they would stop and go up and go down and then continue on. That was mesmerizing the way it was going. Then it'll go, and then keep going counterclockwise. That really grabbed your attention. Then after that, all of a sudden, there was a light show, like a giant disco. The whole city turned into a giant disco, and there were spots of light twirling all over. I mean, spinning all over, faster and faster and faster. And then it just stopped, and the whole city was black again. But for a few seconds, these lights were spinning. It was like you were in a giant disco. It was unbelievable. Then it just stopped, and it was total darkness. Then that light came shining down on a window that I remember. And it was shining on that window. When it started to move around, it went down to street level and past a certain bunch of gates that I knew what building it was, but I hadn't known until that's right, those gates there. And I didn't know what building it was until I saw the light shoot by those gates. And then right away, I knew what building it was. And it went as if it heard me asking myself, what building is that? It shot down, showed me those gates, and then went back up to the building again. It was on the top floor on the side of the street that was facing the New York Post, not on the other side of the street where Linda's apartment was, but on, I think they call it Water Street. The light was traveling around that building, around those windows. When it's focused on one window, it started to get really bright. It looked about the size of a beach ball. It fit in the window pretty well, the light. And it started getting very bright, and I looked away down to my side view mirror, and the whole sky lit up, and I saw in my side view mirror all the people that are out of their vehicles, and they were crossing themselves. They were really impacted. That's what scared me. When I saw how shook up these people were, I go, whoa, what's going on here? And they were pointing towards the craft, which I hadn't even looked at yet because I was seeing them in the mirror all shook up, and I knew they were pointing. And I said to myself, God, give me strength, whatever they're pointing at, I'm about to look at, and I don't want to end up in the shape they're in. And as I'm turning to look at that light, at the craft or whatever they were looking at, a voice in my head from when I was 10 years old said, and now the greatest show on earth, like I was at the circus. I don't know how that happened, but I heard a voice in my head. Okay, the guy's crazy. He heard voices in his head. But I heard a voice like the ringmaster say, and now the greatest show on earth. And into that light came Linda and the three ETs in a triangular formation around Linda, opening up as they traveled up the line. That's when I saw the bottom of the craft. It was pitch black, like outer space black. And as I went up on the craft watching, there was a donut hole that had like a yellow plasma in it bubbling. And that turned into a spinning cotton candy type fire inside the dome before it disappeared. But for that fraction of a second, I saw the pool of yellow fluid, whatever it was, and then it just dissipated to inside the shell of the craft, counterclockwise spinning, and the craft turned red, and I think it went over my head.
And this is the rendition of what you had made to show what the craft actually looked like.
Yes, the hole wasn't quite that big, but it was a nice sized hole up on top.
Wow. So it was completely black. There were no lights on it?
No lights.
Okay.
The only lights was when it was close up and I saw that arc with those lights going counterclockwise. When it turned like this, there were no lights on it, just that white yellow fluid up on the hole. And then it dissipated to this fiery type thing spinning counterclockwise, like a cotton candy machine, actually.
Right. Unbelievable. This photograph here is where you saw the limousine, correct?
Correct. On the left side, double park with 2 rows of stretch limousines on both sides of the highway. The other side of the road and where that truck is, there were 2 lanes of limousines. And then under the highway, there were 2 lanes of stretch limousines. And I was exactly up on top of the bridge right up there. That's just where I was. So you could see how close I was to where the limousines were.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the failing of the electronics didn't just affect all the cars on the bridge. It also included the ignition system of the Secretary General's limousine, didn't it?
All their limousines, all the stretch limousines came to a halt. And every car in Manhattan must have stalled out.
So how many limousines were there, Yancy?
There were at least 20, close to 20 limousines.
20 limousines.
Yes. So I imagine all of the Security Council was there with their staff and their chauffeurs and their security. I mean, the windows were blacked out. And the reason I know there was the Security Council, the UN cars, is because another coworker told me he saw flags on their bumpers. He was the one that told me this was the night they put out the comic section in the paper for the first time. So all the men had to come in that were in the delivery department. So it wasn't very empty. I mean, there were dozens of people around that saw this.
Mm-hmm. So let me pull up this photograph here. What are we looking at here, Yancy?
That's also the Manhattan Bridge from the back of the building where some of the trucks park. There's a parking lot in the back of the building. That's right where the bridge is, across the street.
Okay. And then this one that we have here.
That's the bays that Bobby walked out of. And if you see the trees across the street, that's where he walked over to. He walked over to that street and he saw the entities on that street and turned around to go back into the bays.
Unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine? Well, you don't have to imagine because you were there. But I cannot imagine how scary that morning must have been for everybody who witnessed that.
You know, that could be part of what helped everybody to forget it. I mean, I understand when you deal with something very traumatic, sometimes the mind just shuts it out like it never happened. I think that's possibly what kind of helped everybody forget that they did see this. They saw it, they got panicked and amazed, but then they just forgot about it. And that's what's totally unbelievable. And that's what makes this thing it's possible to figure out scientifically if I'm telling the truth or not. I mean, I can walk over to somebody that was there and they'll swear up and down they didn't see anything. But under relaxed regression, they'll remember everything.
Right.
And you can repeat that. And that's what Bud Hopkins did. He repeated that experiment with Steve Dunleavy. And I didn't know about it because Steve Dunleavy didn't tell me that he was going to see Bud. Matter of fact, Richard Dolan told me I could never get Steve Dunleavy to go see Bud Hopkins. But Richard probably learned that I like a challenge because I went ahead and did it. I got Steve Dunleavy to go see Bud Hopkins.
Now tell us who Steve Dunleavy is.
Steve Dunleavy's a well-known reporter at the New York Post. He was a good friend of Rupert Murdoch's too, but he was a well-known reporter. And his curiosity was aroused because I reminded him of the conversation we had up in the lounge that night about how he was talking about most Americans don't know what the Vietnam War was all about. And I told him, Steve, it was all about money. And he was impressed that somebody knew that, you know. And when I went and took this gentleman to Brooklyn, when I came back, I went upstairs again. I figured I'd carry on the conversation with Steve because I've never had a conversation with the man. And he wasn't there when I came back. But he was there when they were all returned. And they were all returned at the same time. That's when I knew I'd remembered everything, when I knew exactly the moment that everybody was taken, they were returned.
Well, as we go further into the show, we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about the return of Linda and everyone else that was brought back from this crazy, crazy night that they were taken. Tell me what this one is here, Yancy, with the trees. Is this where these beings were?
Yes, that's the bays are right. You can't see the bays, but they're right there. That's the corner that he crossed over and walked over underneath those trees. And he saw the three entities.
Mm-hmm.
And Linda's apartment is on the right, on that building in the background, up on the 12th floor on the right. It's not facing the New York Post. It's facing a different direction, I believe.
Right. And of course, just to show Linda's apartment again, that is Linda's apartment that she was taken from the 12th story through a closed window. Closed window.
That's one of the pictures I took that has UAOs or UFOs in it, objects in the picture that I took. And I didn't realize that till years later when I had those pictures blown up. I saw these craft.
UAPs.
Yeah, the UAPs, whatever you want to call them. They look like just bubbles. They look like Tic Tacs. There were two of them right above that chimney stack on the right. I have a picture. I'll send you a picture of it where it's clearer.
Oh yes, you must have done. We would have loved to have seen that tonight with those craft.
Well, I'll get it to you and we can come on again.
Perfect. What are we looking at here, Yancy?
That is the diner, the South Street Diner. When I started working there in 1973, it was called the Postmortem Diner. Now, that diner is the only other building on that block besides the New York Post, which used to be the Journal American. So that whole block footprint is the New York Post, except for that one South Street Diner. That's separate by itself. And that's where I was when they were returned.
Mm-hmm. Now, and that's called the Postmortem Diner?
It used to be the Postmortem. They changed it to South Street. I could tell you some crazy stories about that diner and things that have happened there, but it's...
Well, there's still time on this show.
No. People like Robert De Niro walked in there once, and just interesting people have come and gone in that building. I mean, that neighborhood is a family neighborhood, especially almost a half a dozen families in particular. So if you know what I'm talking about, it's a pretty mobbed up place, to be nice about it. But that is famous for the five being active.
Right. Well, just pulling this up again, where those beings were on that street there. How many beings were on that street, do you know, Yancy?
No. Bobby said he saw 3 of them before he turned around to come back in the building.
So were they the same 3 that took Linda?
I don't think so. I think
really?
I think those 3 came out of her apartment with her. I don't think they were on the ground with Bobby. I could check them, but no, I'm pretty sure those three were separate from the three that took Linda up, because Bobby remembers seeing one of the beings when he looked up to see Linda. He didn't see all three. I guess from the ground you couldn't, but from the Manhattan Bridge you could. Mm-hmm. So if you saw the three up there, I don't think they could have been down on the ground with them at the same time.
And these beings were typical grey beings, right?
Yes, Ebens, I think they call them.
Ebens, right? Were they wearing any jumpsuits or not?
Black jumpsuits with like turtleneck collars. It was like a uniform type thing. They were all black, but it could have been another color that just showed black. I mean, it could have been a silver or something that turned black. Mm-hmm. But they wore black outfits, yeah.
Wow. Okay, and then what do we see in this photograph here?
This is a very good photograph. If you see it, the pillar that's holding up the highway across the street, right there was an unmarked car with its headlights on after all the other cars left. That car sat there for at least an hour with its headlights on, while the Rolls Royce was across the street at the end of the island, which I'll point out in another picture. Okay. But there was a whole bunch of men that were wondering what that car was doing sitting there with its headlights on, watching the Rolls Royce, which was parked across the street.
Now, who do you suspect was in that vehicle?
I think Dan and Rich, who were the agents that were guarding the Secretary General. Because I saw them drag a man off the roof of a car, and I thought the guy had too much to drink. He was in one of the stretch limos, and he had too much to drink in one of the portable bars, and he got out and went up on the roof of a car to get fresh air. That was my thinking. What else would a guy be doing on the roof of a car? It was an unmarked car, and as they were dragging him off, they were being careful not to poke his eye out on all the antennas on the trunk. There must have been a whole bunch of police antennas on the trunk. But they were over the right quarter panel, the rear quarter panel, trying to get him off the roof. And that was my thought. Oh, this guy had too much to drink. And I was about to say that to the gentleman next to me. But then another gentleman came up the stairs, and he sounded like a monster. But the guy was a sweetheart of a guy, and he was built like a monster. He worked out. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. So when he came into the bar and sat down and ordered a beer, the other gentlemen that were there, they were kind of like regulars. They said, what's going on? Is the world coming to an end? This guy's getting a beer. He doesn't drink. They couldn't understand it. And he didn't drink it. He just sat there and looked at it because he had just come back and he didn't know what was going on.
I think that event that night would make anyone want to drink.
Yes.
To be honest. Even if you were a non-drinker, you would want to after that night.
That's how I know Steve Dunleavy was brought back, because when he went to the bar to get a drink, he walked past where Steve Dunleavy was sitting, and there he was again sitting, but he wasn't there when I walked up into the bar. So he was gone, and he came back when they were all brought back. There was a flash of light, like a copy machine, the way it travels over the top of the machine.
Yes.
It was a light that came over the whole area. It must have gone over the bar or whatever. But then there was a sonic boom where the whole building shook. It was that loud of a boom. That's when I looked out the window, because I thought it might start raining and I didn't want to work in the rain. So when I looked out the window, that's when I saw this gentleman on the roof of the car being taken off by these other two guys. And I was about to say to the guy next to me, look at this guy on the roof of the car. But then came this gentleman up really heavy steps out of the silence after the sonic boom to sit down and get a beer. And everybody was going, I can't believe he's having a beer. What's going on? The world coming to an end. That's just what the conversation was like.
Wow. This photograph that I'm showing here, Yancy.
Yes, that is exactly where the Rolls Royce was parked, exactly how far it was from the curb. So you had to step down if you wanted to put your hand in the car, which I'm sure a few guys were thinking about, because they had suitcases, attaché cases, and they had the small portable phones that first came out the size of books.
Yes.
They were on the front seat, but nobody would do that because across the street was the unmarked car with the lights on. But you have to imagine this is all dark at night and stuff, but that's just where the Rolls Royce was. And the driver was outside on the left side of the car, because that's where they drive from, the left-hand side of the car. Excuse me, the right-hand side, if facing it now, it would be on the left, but driving it would be on the right.
Right. So we can imagine the scene then of all the cars having come to a standstill on the bridge. The engines stopped, the cars died out. This meant that the Secretary General and his two special agents, Richard and Dan, who you've mentioned, were now a captive audience, watching all of this, as were the people on Brooklyn Bridge, who you said, began to panic. They began to scream. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. All pandemonium broke loose.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I just want to show the picture again of the object that you had reconstructed of what you had seen.
Yes, that was from the Manhattan Bridge. I could see so clearly.
Okay. And also this picture of yourself. Look how you were there. You were
20 years ago.
20 years ago. And that is a reconstruction of the being that you saw.
It's a conceptual thing. The eyes are what really totally take you over. Something about their eyes is mesmerizing, and they're just unique. So I kept making different models with different kind of eyes. And if you could see behind me, you could see they all have different eyes.
Yes, those are the models that you've constructed from what you saw that's behind you.
I was waiting for Bud to write about it in a book, and all that time I had nothing to do, so I was making models and things like that. And I think I showed you the working models that I made.
Yes, exactly. Right. Describe the Secretary General's limousine to us, Yancy.
That's a good one. See, the mind really works strange, the memory. When I remembered the Rolls Royce, I remembered it as being white. And I remember it as being white because I said to the guys that were looking at the Rolls Royce, it was an ugly green. And I said, gee, it's a beautiful car, but it's such an ugly color. It would look good in white. So I remembered it as being white, but it wasn't white. It was an ugly military green. So it shows you how the memory works. The fact that I thought it would look good in white, I remembered it as being white.
Mm-hmm. But, of course, we find out that it wasn't. It was a totally different color.
Right.
And it was a military green.
Yeah. Ugly green.
An ugly green, you would say.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I want to do, Yancy. I want to play the audio clip of your radio interview with Rob McConnell from the X Zone radio show in Canada, which you did in 2006, 15 years ago. Can you believe it?
Seems like yesterday.
Seems like yesterday. And it's a very interesting clip because as you're talking about the Secretary General's limousine and describing it, the color of it, you get cut off the airwaves as you're describing it. So let's have our listeners take a listen to this.
Yeah, but it's such an ugly color. It looked great in white. So it shows you the way the memory works. It wasn't white. I just thought it would look nice in white, and that was my first memories of thinking that it was white. But it turns out it wasn't white. It was a military green. And I figured that the color of this Rolls Royce, I couldn't understand how the factory would even let it out of the showroom in that color. But I have a strange feeling that it was probably a military green, and the only other person to have a Rolls Royce like that was probably Montgomery during World War II. Yeah. Hello? Yes? Hello? 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 Yes. Did we all get disconnected? Is this you, Marshall?
I apologize for that. I apologize for that. We're having some technical difficulties here, but I'm sure that they're working at them as we speak on Talkstar. Once again, Marshall and Yancy, I apologize for these problems that we're having.
Understandable.
But we're all back now, and that's the main thing.
Okay. Maybe I could...
Now, please do.
Maybe I could pick this up with trying to explain that there are people who are investigating this, but they're doing it behind the scenes, I imagine. And a perfect example of that is last August 24th, I believe you had Stanton Friedman on the show. And I had met Stanton Friedman twice. And what he had to say was very interesting on your show that night about how this was a seamless event. it happened, and just people don't know that it happened. It's hidden away in their memory, and that's how it's done. I'm not sure, but it's.
Wow. Now, isn't that pretty typical of someone being cut off when you're talking to someone that, you can't speak your mind? Someone doesn't want you to talk about that, Yancy.
Well, that wasn't the first time. I've been cut off a few times when I felt. I could give you a perfect example. I went down to Washington to Stephen Bassett's seminars, and I figured maybe Steve would let me would let me talk, but he told me, to come back with a PowerPoint presentation. And I said, Steve, I don't understand. You have Richard Dolan, Bud Hopkins, Leslie Kane. They're all saying I'm credible. Why can't I have a few minutes to speak? And he said, come back with a PowerPoint presentation. So I never went down to Washington again just to maybe speak. But they really, they don't want to hear me. They really don't.
So what was said afterwards, after you did that radio show by Rob McConnell about, the cutting off from the air? I mean, if anything, what did he say?
Well, if I remember correctly, Marshall Masters was also on that show with me, and he does reports for CNN, Science Reports, I believe. And he was talking about how a source that he has was interested in this case. He wasn't interested in it, but when the source heard the date, he knew he wanted to know about this situation. So he said the source is in security and works for the government, and he was more interested in the case than Marshall Masters was. But Marshall was talking about it because this gentleman had called in and wanted to know about the case. I don't understand why it's not being spoken about. Every time I've tried to bring information forward publicly, I've been told to come back. We don't have time. One excuse after another. They just don't want to hear what I have to say.
Mm-hmm. Now, once they picked up Linda, the craft then went down into the Hudson River, didn't it? And people actually saw it go into the water. This is just more proof that UFOs do like to use rivers, lakes, and oceans to travel. It's a good way to be seen and undetected. So,
well, it went back into the water after it returned everybody, because when it left when I was seeing it, it went over my head, over the bridge, and supposedly went to 23rd Street, where there were women that were drifting down 23rd Street to meet it near the pier. One of my coworkers who was on board the craft said he was in a circular room and a door slid open and a bunch of women in pajamas came in and said to him, "Are you going to the movie?" And he said, "I don't know where the heck I didn't use those words, but he said, I don't know where the heck I'm going." Because he was in his work clothes and these women were in their pajamas. And he said, "I don't know where the heck I'm going." So he ended up going into an auditorium and watching a film. I don't know if it was a lab test or if a lesson, that they want to see their reactions, or they want them to see what they were showing them. And what they were showing was destruction of the planet, the way the fires and floods, all the disasters that we're experiencing, they showed in this film clip or whatever it was, three-dimensional type visual effect, like a hologram or whatever that they were all watching.
Right. And it didn't really end there. Because, with just Linda, because that night, it wasn't just Linda that was taken. There was a mass abduction. And we are going to go to a break here real soon. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this, because this included one or two friends of yours from the New York Post. One that had sand on his shoes, as you said, when he was returned, and was totally baffled how sand had gotten onto his shoes. And we'll talk about that when we come back. Yancy, we will be going to a break here. And I'm going to have a drink of my Queen's Beans in my mug. I hope you have a wonderful coffee break. And we'll be right back after this.
Perfect.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
What really happens when we die? What lies on the other side? And is death the end? My new book, I Survived Beyond and Back, sheds light on these questions and takes you on a journey of first-hand near-death experiences as reported by those who experience them. I Survived Beyond and Back, available now on Amazon and bookstores nationwide.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
And welcome back to the Tracie Austin Show here on KGRA Radio. We're so glad that you're joining us tonight for this 2-hour exclusive interview with my friend and guest, Yancy Spence. And before we went to the break there, we were talking about a couple of Yancy's friends who were part of this abduction that very night in the middle of Manhattan. So, Yancy, let's talk about your two friends. Let's talk about one of your friends named Bobby. First of all.
Yes, Bobby, when Bobby went home that morning, he took off his shoes and socks outside in his garage, and he noticed the sand and his socks were wet and sand in his shoes. And his wife was giving him a hard time. She said, "Where did you go? You have a sunburn, you smell like the beach, and your shoes and socks are wet." And the only excuses he could come up with was maybe there was a puddle down by the post, and I think they were filming a movie. Maybe I got caught in the lights. And he did look for something in the paper about what had happened because he didn't know what it was, but he'd forgotten about it right away too. He just remembered the next day he was looking because of the sand and water in his shoes and socks, and his wife was asking, "Well, what the heck was that from?"
Yeah, he had to have gone somewhere to.
Yeah. He said he was taken to a beach with a lot of other people, and he was wandering away from where they were, and a spotlight came down on him as he was in the shrubbery of the beach, and he went back to where everybody else was. Now, this is what he's telling me, and I believe this man. The men that I knew that came forward, they had no reason to lie. They're hardworking guys with families, and they're just interested in the truth and to find out as much as they can about what they experienced. Mm-hmm. They're not looking for attention like I'm not. I really don't need attention. I just think it's important enough that somebody has to talk about it.
Right. How long did this whole thing last for, Yancy?
It was hard to tell. Probably a minute, maybe a little bit less than a minute. I don't know how long it takes to climb up 12 flights of stairs, actually, but it's got to take 30 seconds, 40 seconds at least. And so much happened with the lights and the light show and the craft just hovering and traveling up and down it, the people on the bridge. It lasted almost a minute. It wasn't that long. I mean, it was short, but it lasted enough where it took some time because so much happened.
I don't think I've ever asked you this, but when we've been speaking, before, but did you have any missing time with this incident yourself?
No, I didn't.
Nothing at all.
No.
Wow.
I just forgot about it. How can you forget about something like that?
How can you forget?
How could you not remember it? It was just so overpowering that it's incredible that you'd forget it unless you were told to forget it or somehow they were able to wipe your memory. Not just mine, everybody's memory. I mean, everybody that was up and the lights went out and experienced the blackout, which had to be thousands of people, don't remember. They don't remember the blackout, but under relaxed regression, they probably do. I mean, there had to be cleaning crews in those buildings. In the skyscrapers, they have people coming in at night to clean. And so many people are really awake in Manhattan at 3 a.m. I know it doesn't sound right, but there are an awful lot of people around.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's a good point there. The cleaning crews in the buildings at that time of the morning.
And Police Plaza is a block away, so.
Yeah. Well, we just talked a little bit about Bobby there. Let's talk a little bit about Mr. Eamon for a moment.
Mystery Man. Yeah, Mystery Man.
Okay, the mystery
man is also a good friend of mine. And later on in the evening, we were in a locker room and we were having a conversation with a bunch of guys and he had walked away. And when he came back, I said to Mr. E-Man, I don't call him Mr. E-Man, but I said, where'd you go? He said, I went to see him. When I stepped in, I thought they might be cleaning the floor because my shoes and socks are all wet. And my wife just bought me these shoes and socks. I don't know what I stepped in. So that happened that night. Bobby didn't tell me about what he remembered as socks and sand and all that till years later, till, in 2001 when I first approached Bobby about this. That's when he started remembering. Matter of fact, he wanted to know what was in the water at the New York Post because I was the second guy to come to him and tell him, there was a flying saucer and aliens at the New York Post. And there was another person that approached him years earlier about that. And he thought the guy lost it. He didn't understand. He said, look, what's going on down there? This guy's crazy. He came up here and said that I was in a light and he saw me in a light and there was a flying saucer. And he just didn't understand what the guy was talking about. And this guy, I remember Bobby calling me over because we worked in the same place. And this guy came out there to bring papers and had Bobby on the side and was very animated, telling him, this and this. And Bobby came over to me and said, Spence, come here and listen to him for a minute. What's he talking about? So I went over and this guy was very, you were in the light, there was this and that. And I listened for a minute, but then I had to go do my job. And what he told me was years later, he was telling him he was in the light and stuff. So this gentleman must have remembered and was trying to tell Bobby to remember, but Bobby just shook it off like the guy was like crazy, which he shouldn't have because this guy was a very straight-laced guy. He didn't do drugs. He wasn't a big drinker. Beautiful guy, very jovial, really happy. He had 3 sons. Unfortunately, he got killed in an automobile wreck with a truck.
Oh boy.
It's a dangerous job, people who work driving at night. I don't think Americans know that, but behind the wheel of a truck is a very dangerous job.
And talking about the New York Post, the New York Post never covered this story, obviously.
No.
Never, ever got covered.
Nobody knew this story. That's what I mean. That everybody was made to forget it. And it wasn't an easy job to get Steve Dunleavy to go see Bud Hopkins. But I did it, and I'm glad I did because, Bud could have thought that these other gentlemen who I work with were just corroborating some kind of nonsense with me. But a man like Steve Dunleavy, when he comes to see him, and under hypnosis relays that he went on board the craft. I only know this because I have inside information. I don't even think Steve's family knows this, but he was taken, and he did see Bud, and it was revealed to him that he was taken.
Mm-hmm. What was the order of things with the abduction of the Secretary General? Because the Secretary General was also taken. We're still not given his name yet, but we will in a few moments. Was that after Linda, or at the same time?
I don't know. I imagine they were all taken at the same time. The only person I saw was Linda, but I imagine they were all taken at the same time, and they were all brought back at that moment where I told you the building shook and there was a flash of light and a sonic boom. And then there's Steve Dunleavy was sitting where he wasn't a second ago, and the guy was out on the roof. That's when I was back at the post at about 10 to 4. So about 30 minutes they were gone to wherever they went, and then they were all brought back at the same time.
Right. Now, Richard and Dan were secret agents, bodyguards, secret agents. And I remember the late Bud Hopkins talking about this at a MUFON meeting many years ago. And he said that Richard and Dan couldn't believe what they were witnessing. And in fact, one of them had a nervous breakdown because he couldn't handle what he saw. Was that Richard or was that Dan?
That's Dan. And I've been reminded a few times that Dan is possibly deceased. He's MIA.
Really?
Yeah, he's MIA or whatever. That's what I've been told more than one occasion. I think I was told that so that I would listen to people telling me. Well, actually, I could speak honestly here. It's been so much time. But in 2006, I was told not to talk about this because of an ongoing investigation. Now, I was also told that it wasn't the police, but like the police, they don't discuss it until the investigation is over. Now, that's, what, 15 years ago? It's longer, 17 years ago, in 2006, right? So it's 14, 15 years ago, I was told I was part of an ongoing investigation. Now, I don't know about you, but you get a stiff neck after a while wondering who the hell is following you for 15 And I didn't know. I left it at that. I didn't inquire who is it, who is doing the investigation, because I knew I wasn't going to get a correct answer. So I didn't ask, but I don't want to disturb anybody. And I know they're going to say, well, he's making this up too. But I knew I was being followed back then, and I didn't know by who until Lou Alessandro showed his face on TV. And I knew right away that gentleman was following me in 2006.
Really?
Yes. And so right away I knew, okay, now I knew who was doing the investigation. But I didn't know for all those years until I recognized him following me. And so it just shows.
Unbelievable.
This event is what the Rockefeller Initiative was basically all about. Lawrence Rockefeller, he had John Mack, Dave Jacobs, Bud Hopkins, Bigelow, Linda Moulton Howe. He was supporting all these people in their investigations and stuff. And this was one of the major investigations he was into, because at the last MUFON meeting, Bud Hopkins spoke about how he, Dave Jacobs, and John Mack all went up to Lawrence Rockefeller's bedroom because the DVR or his VCR downstairs wasn't working. So they all went up to his bedroom, and he found that fascinating that they were all sitting in Lawrence Rockefeller's bedroom watching a tape about Linda Cortiel. So there's a lot. This case is very well known, and it's a major case that they just don't talk about because it's so conclusive in its findings. And if I don't mean to cut you off, Trace, but this is one of the reasons I came on. I was watching a show where somebody wrote about John Mack's life, and they called him the Believer. And they didn't even call him Dr. John Mack. They called him John Mack. And what they had to say, the information was just plain wrong. And you cannot do that if you want to get anywhere to find out what's going on. You have to give correct information. And this gentleman, Ralph Blumenthal, who wrote this book about Dr. John Mack, not John Mack, Dr. John Mack, stated in this Zoom conference with Leslie Kane that nobody's ever seen anybody abducted. They've seen people that have been missing and claimed they were abducted, but nobody's ever seen an abduction. Now, Dr. John Mack was very aware of the Linda Cortiel abduction, and in his book, abductions on page 35, he wrote about this case being the only case he knew of where an abduction was actually witnessed. And it was witnessed by hundreds, if not thousands of people. So I don't understand to this day why he wasn't informed that when I came forward that another witness had come forward in this case who could be the witness he was talking about. Because he explained that only somebody who witnesses an abduction can provide the overwhelming evidence that it happened. And if you think about it, it's true. And when I saw that, and the gentleman, Ralph Blumenthal, was saying that he made John Mack look like Timothy Leary, like a woman chaser and a drug user. He was into no nukes. Yes, he was behind humane causes, but I don't believe for 1 second he was painted as a wild, loose type crazy guy. He was very intelligent, and he was on top of this situation. They wanted to ostracize him from medicine because he refused to let it go. He wanted to know exactly what was going on. And who knows, it may have led to his demise, the fact that he was too into this. At the time back then, 15, 20 years ago, they did not want to let it out like they are now. I think they're starting to come to their senses and realize you can't lie to a whole nation of people.
No, you can't. You can't. And I just want to, because you just talked about Bud Hopkins there a little bit. Most people, if not everyone, who are interested in ufology or are researchers in this subject will know who Bud Hopkins was. And Bud wrote quite an in-depth book about this incident called Witnessed. And that is the book there. It's an incredible book. You did approach Bud after you read his book and had a few in-person meetings with him, Yancy. And we're going to play some video of that in a moment. But I do want to play a video clip of Bud talking about this incident that happened and of one witness that was obviously she's just one among many. But take a look at this. This is Bud talking.
Suggest that a majority of the American people believe UFOs are physically real, rather than imaginary or hoaxes or whatnot. I'm standing at exactly the spot where this very strange event was seen at 3 a.m. really on November 30th, 1989. A woman was driving from Brooklyn to New York, right down here in the outer lane. Her car engine died, the lights went out, and she looked over to this building, the one in the distance with a little pointed roof. And at that point, she saw a burst of light as a UFO hovering only a few feet above it turned on all of its lights. Two small figures below her and one above her. The light was intense. The woman was terrified and thought, they must be making a movie. This is a film of some sort. And the figures floated up into the UFO, and then the UFO changed its lights, zoomed out across the river and across the bridge and disappeared. And the woman's car lights and engine started back up again. But this is the way it started for her that night.
Wow. And that lady was named Janet Kimball.
Yes. I missed that man. But yes, Janet Kimball was who you were talking about.
Yeah. You've been briefly talking about Janet earlier. But for our audience, just explain who Janet Kimball is. We know she was a witness there, but how did this all come about with a letter?
From what I understand, I haven't read the book in years. Janet was coming back from a retirement party in Brooklyn, going over the Brooklyn Bridge when her car stalled and this happened. And for some reason, I don't know why, she had written a letter to Bud Hopkins and told her said exactly what she saw on the Brooklyn Bridge. And that is what broke my memory. I didn't place what was going on until I read her letter. And when I read her letter, everything came flying back to me like I was a magnet. I thought she was on the bridge right behind me because my thoughts were the same. Oh, they're making a movie. Oh, no, they're not. Well, what's this? Our thoughts were the same. And that's what triggered my rememory, breaking through the amnesia. If Bud never would have put that in the book, I don't think I ever would have broken through it. But
right.
So that's, I'm thankful for the man for that,
Absolutely. I just want to show a video here of the craft that you had made, Yancy, with, as you described, the orange glow at the top of it. So here this one comes. There it is. What did you make that out of, by the way?
Oh, an old lamp, I believe.
An old lamp.
Yeah.
Wow. But it gives you a good idea of what that looked like.
Yeah, that's very good representation of what it looked like just before it took off. The other one is what it looked like when it was hovering.
Right.
I don't know if you have a picture of that one, but do you have a picture?
I don't have that. I have that one there that you...
No, that's like the one that was spinning. But
right.
All right, I'll get you another one. Another reason to be in touch.
Okay. Well, now in Bud Hopkins' book Witnessed, Bud only ever referred to who this Secretary General was by calling him the third man. The third man in the vehicle with Richard and Dan. So we have to reveal here who this person was, Yancy, because he did actually pass away last year. And who is this third man?
He was the Secretary General of the United Nations, Javier de Perez de Chilar, I believe.
There he is, Perez de Cuellar.
Yes, Perez de Cuellar.
Yeah, Javier Perez de Cuellar. That is the third man that Bud could not give his name. I know that Bud approached him, and because he witnessed what he witnessed on the bridge, and he said he would not come forward, and he didn't want any part of this incident. And if Bud was to mention his name ever, he would flat out deny that he was ever involved with this abduction case. He was a Peruvian diplomat and politician who served as the 5th Secretary General at the United Nations from January 1st of 1982 until December 31st of 1991. He died last March 4th of 2020, at 100 years of age. So if my math serves me right, he was 69 years of age when this whole abduction thing occurred.
Yeah.
So
I feel sorry for the man. He must have been plagued with wondering what to do, what's the right thing to do. It's a difficult situation for anybody. Take a look at the former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington. The gentleman understood what he did was wrong, and morally he had a hard time dealing with it, so he came out and clarified what he did see, which I have a great deal of respect for the man, because most people wouldn't do that. But he did that. I'd like to see him run for office for the sheer fact that he did that.
Right. And like I said, I remember Bud Hopkins talking about this event at a MUFON meeting in California, because I was there, and it included this Secretary General. Bud had said he did approach him and asked to please come forward and talk about this, and that this extraordinary event actually happened, and that it would help mankind realize that we are being visited and that these beings are real. But Bud said he was told by this man, Perez de Cuellar, that if he ever revealed his name, that the third man's name, he would flat out deny it, and he would never come forward. So that's why it's been withheld all this time, and for 32 years that has gone by. Can you believe it?
I mean, he was in a position to do exactly what you said he should have done, and I believe he should have done. But there are reasons we don't know why he didn't. Maybe they were personal, maybe they were religious, maybe they were pressure from other people. He just was there. You know what's really interesting about this, Tracie? If you think about it, this was a reenactment of the day the Earth stood still. In that movie, they had representatives from all over the world there when K2 came out, when Michael Rennie came out of the ship. He was speaking to all the different nations, people of different nations. So it makes you wonder, did you think they saw this and reenacted what they saw? I mean, that is something I thought of, because that's exactly what it was.
Right. And this is why you and I talked about it being the day Manhattan stood still.
Right. Yeah, that's why it took that name.
That's right. That's right. I want to play the video that you sent me, Yancy, of you in a meeting with Bud. So let me bring this up
I
And
think this is the first time he came to my home and we spoke.
was it?
Yeah.
Okay. And that must have been, was that towards the end of 1989 or was that going into 1990?
That was 2001.
Oh, it was 2001.
Yeah, 11 and a half years it took for me to break through the amnesia. And that's when I reached out to Bud in 2001. So it was my own little space odyssey in 2001.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Let me bring up that video, Yancy.
Else involved in it too.
Yeah, okay.
But the point is that they took, Linda came out here, and down here, underneath the FDR drive is where the agents would park. So they saw it this way. Women on Brooklyn Bridge saw it this way.
Okay, and all the men that work at the New York Post were under the garage. That's
Yeah, right. Yeah, the roof. Yeah, outside. Yeah, they were indoors.
Although I'm speaking with one friend, he remembers a fright like that. He doesn't know where or when or whatever, but he remembers he went right back into the building because he said it was annoying to him, and he thought the guys in the neighborhood were up to something funny.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, you see, there have to be other people. Yeah.
Oh,
But that's
that's basically how it happened.
Yeah, right.
So, see,
Well, and you
no wonder I didn't see them come up from the light that I saw in the window.
Yeah.
When it got really bright on the window, I looked away, but
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing anything happen.
So there you are in that meeting with Bud. How did that meeting go? As well as you had wanted?
Well, I wanted it just so that my wife could see that he would understand I wasn't being deceitful. I was being honest, and I wanted my wife to hear that. I figured maybe she believed me if he said, hey, seems like you were there and you saw this. But I don't know. Married 30 years, the feminine mystique is really still playing here. I don't think you can understand what it's like to be married to somebody that says, hey, I saw this and I'm going to prove it and go about it and keep fighting. I mean, I'm going to Rochester, I'm going here, dragging her around and my kid. It was trying, and believe me, we had some good conversations about what is reality, and you can.
And what isn't?
I'm very lucky to have the woman that I have.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. It's very difficult in relationships, Yancy. As you know, many people's marriages fail for something like this. So
there were times we had to send the kids into the restaurant while we had a heated discussion in the car. Want to finish the discussion. Kids, wait for us in the restaurant, and then people will be wondering who's screaming their heads off in the car. So there was some fun parts about it,
Right. But some difficult, probably more difficult than fun.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. For a long time. And still, because I stepped back from it, but it's not something that you ever forget, you ever leave. I step back from publicly talking and pushing. I get into arguments on the web with people and stuff, but otherwise, I'm waiting for the experts to have a comment about what I'm saying. That's what's driving me nuts. Everybody, 35 people in Las Vegas at one show this week, I believe. Some show has 35 experts on UFOs in Vegas. I'd like to see one of them answer my question. Am I telling the truth? Am I the witness that John Mack said could provide that overwhelming tamper-proof evidence, which I did? Or am I crazy? Am I lying? Am I making this all up? Bobby doesn't exist. Mr. E-Man doesn't exist. Steve Dunleavy doesn't exist. And is it all a lie? No, I don't lie. I'm not going to lie about something.
Right. No, and it's well, first of all, I know that you're not lying about this situation. You've brought so many people into the conversations that we've had, and people that are alive today. Richard Dolan, Leslie Kane, they know you.
Yes.
They know who you are. Linda knows who you are. Yes. So you're very credible, and that's why we brought you on to the show. I just want to let our listeners know that you can we're going to open up the phone lines in about 4 minutes. You can call our number here at 855-472-5483. And again, that number is 855-472-5483. We'll open up the phone lines. Have your questions ready for Yancy. I know he's eager to answer anything that you have to ask him. And before we do that, before we open up those phone lines, Yancy, let's talk about when and how Linda was returned. And of course, the Secretary General, Perez de Cuellar.
I did not see Linda return, but I did see the Secretary General. I didn't know who he was, but I saw him on the roof of the car being helped off. And I saw him a few minutes later. When I left the upstairs, he came back with everybody else at about 10 to 4. And I was up in the lounge at about 20 after 3. So there's about 20 minutes when these people were still gone. And at 10 to 4, that's when the light and the boom happened. And I saw Perez on the roof and Steve Dunleavy across from me, and he wasn't there a fraction of a second ago. So I saw them come back. But as far as Linda, no, I didn't see her come back. And I did see the Secretary General on the back. When the unmarked car was parked there, he must have gotten out of the car and walked to the bulkhead of the river and was standing behind that car near the river looking into the river. Because I crossed the street to take a look to see if these guys were cops, and to walk by the river for a second. And I looked to my left, and there was this guy in a trench coat looking in the water like he was going to jump in. And Mr. E-Man came up behind me because he came across the street to see what was going on. And we looked in the water, and there was a green foam, this ugly lime green foam, and we couldn't figure out what kind of pollution that was. So it must have been made when the craft went into the water. It must have created that as an after effect, that green lime foam. I wonder if they found any of that around the ships out in the...
That's an interesting... Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It really is. I remember Bud talking at a meeting, a MUFON meeting, about Linda seeing this third man on board the craft with her. She knew he was an important man, but she didn't know who he was. So Bud actually got hold of some photographs of Secretary Generals at the United Nations and placed them in front of Linda and told her to have a look through them. And one by one, he pulled them out. She had a look through, and she was saying, no, that's not him. No, that's not him. No, that's not him. Until she came to Javier Perez de Cuellar, and she said, that's him. That's the man that was on board with me. So they dropped him off on the roof of his vehicle or the roof of a building.
An unmarked car. The Rolls Royce was parked separately at the end of the island. That unmarked car was directly outside of the diner across the street, and that's the roof he was returned on.
I see. Didn't Linda, I know you didn't see Linda's return, but isn't there hearsay that she was returned to her room and both her and her husband and her son were switched off?
Yes, according to Bud's book. Yes, that's what he wrote.
And this is what usually happens in abduction scenarios. The other person, the partner, the boyfriend, the spouse, whatever, is switched off, like they're just fast asleep.
Yeah. Who knows if they're manipulating time and you're going between seconds and they're doing what they're doing, what we would take a few minutes to do, they're doing in fractions of a second. Who knows? Maybe they can move that fast, or they can speed up time or lower. I just know that I felt there was a manipulation of time somehow.
Mm. Yeah. And according to Linda, what I have read, that when she returned, she held a mirror underneath her husband's nose and her son to see if they were still breathing.
Oh, I believe Linda. I believe she's a very credible woman. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, because, when she got back, she thought that they were dead or something. I mean, she didn't even think that they were alive. So that's why she did the mirror test, just to be sure.
Yeah, I would imagine she was very frightened, wondering what's going on.
Right. This was the being, well, these were the beings that you saw here, with the black eyes, the very thin face, the thin neck, pale. Were they pale?
Yes, they were.
They were.
Yes. And that is the creature. And when I saw that picture, it was like I walked into a post office and I saw Jesse James up on the wall. I recognized the creature right away. I knew that was exactly the creature I saw. I don't know, a creature, a being, entity. Bobby, from what he told me, they were flesh. They had flesh. I mean, he touched it. He was allowed to touch it.
Really?
Yes, he allowed him to touch him. And he said he was kind of like a doughboy type thing.
Like a Pillsbury dough person.
Yes. And he remembers lying on a table and seeing a whole bunch of little beings peeping around the wall, watching while he was on a table, probably being examined. But he looked up and saw a whole bunch of these little, like baby beings, looking from behind the wall, like they were curious. So that's one of the things he remembered.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. This, and of course, again, I'm going to pull this up because these are the little models that you had made to depict what you had seen that night.
Yeah, that's the same model, but with a dark tint and a light tint. One of them looks vicious, the other one not so vicious. You know, it was just me playing around for a while with keeping myself busy, waiting for Bud to write about what I had, get the information I had given him, the other witnesses had given him. He had told me for years he was writing an addition to the book, a new book. He was deceitful to me in a lot of ways, but I guess in the position he was in, that's the way he had to behave. But you begin to resent it when somebody is not honest to your friends, much less you. You could deal with it at a certain age. But when they start lying to people that you introduce them to, you kind of get a little upset. He's lying to people that this is a friend of mine, try and be honest with him, and he's not. I mean, after he confirmed Mystery Man, Mr. E-Man went to see him, and he confirmed in front of me that Mr. E-Man was taken. And from what Mr. E-Man was telling Bud, I could tell he was taken because he also had the wet shoes and he went up to the roof and never went up to the roof again when he used to go up there all the time. And people who have those experiences don't ever want to go back to the place where it took.
I'm sure.
They stay away from it. But Mr. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just going to ask you, Yancy, Men in Black. Was there anything that anybody said about having visitations from Men in Black? Because you and I have never actually talked about that.
No, I can't say Men in Black, but like I said, Mr. Alessandro wasn't wearing black, but he had a crew cut, and he definitely looked military. I mean, we looked each other in the eye, and he knew I was taking a mental snapshot of him. I don't think he thought I'd remember him after 11 years or 12 years. But I did. As soon as I saw him, I knew exactly where I saw him.
So did you approach Luis Elizondo? Did you have a conversation?
No.
You didn't?
I didn't know who he was then, and I haven't spoken to him since. I know who he is.
Right. From all this stuff that's come out with UAPs recently and the whole government thing. What do you think's going on with that, Yancy? I mean, what do you think's going to be released on June 24th, 25th. We don't have a definite date as yet, but we're speculating either of those dates. What do you think is going to be released?
That's one of the reasons I stepped back from this, Trace. It's such an unpredictable thing. Some people say something is going to be released. Other people say, no, it's going to be watered down. I just don't know anymore. I mean, I would hope that they would say, we're not alone, get it over with. I mean, people basically know it. I don't think the world's going to go topsy-turvy. It'll cause definitely a conversation that should have taken place a long time ago. But I don't think the world will change that much. And I can't see having a citizen like me, my father's a veteran of World War II, what the heck he is following me around for? I'm not lying about anything. It is a little distracting. But if it helps to get this truth out, then all right, I can understand it. But otherwise, I don't think it's right to be doing that to any citizen.
No, I agree. But what do you think these... now, listen, you've had this tremendous UFO experience of this whole... witnessing this whole abduction thing that you'll never forget for the rest of your life. But with these Navy ships, what do you think they're seeing? Do you think that they are drones? Do you think they are supernatural? Do you think they're interdimensional? Or do you think they belong to China, Russia? What's your thoughts?
I think they're the same technology I saw that morning. And why they're being so blatantly obvious now, or that we're being told about it now, I don't know why. To answer that either question, I can't answer why they're showing themselves so blatantly, or why we're finally being told they're showing themselves so blatantly. It's a tricky situation, you know. It's yin yang with UFOs.
Right, it is, and I don't think I agree with you. I agree with you. I think we're looking at the same technology that you saw that day or that morning of November 30th of 1989. I think we're looking at extraterrestrial technology. I don't think for 1 minute it's China or Russia, because they are having their own sightings. And
but movements, how the movements that it's making, a human being can't survive, making the turns and the G-forces. So right then and there, I mean, that was one thing that Bud made very clear about his research is everybody's talking UFOs, but nobody's talking about who's piloting them. And
that's right.
Is the question that really has to be answered. I don't think these entities mean us any harm, because with their technology, they could have harmed us a long time ago. But
absolutely, they could. Yeah, right? Absolutely, they could.
Why now, in this time in history, are they making themselves so blatantly shown? And that's a good question, and it's something that we have to answer as human beings.
That's right. I wonder if it's, I'll tell you what's gone through my mind. Is it a scare tactic? I mean, listen, we've been amidst this whole COVID pandemic. Is this another scare tactic?
By who? The government?
By the government.
By who?
By the government.
Oh, throwing a wrench into the turmoil that's already there. That's a good question. It's always a possibility. Why not make distracted conversation by really putting a distracting conversation into the conversation?
Right. Yeah, and like I said, I don't believe it's China or Russia. They're actually seeing craft themselves in their countries. And I know that they're going to be having some kind of meeting at the United Nations shortly to ask. China is having a United Nations meeting to ask about these objects and to do their own investigation. Listen, I mean,
China had a representative there that morning, because the traffic that was stopped, I think if you read my article, one of the foremen came out to get one of the limousines to move if he could, because they couldn't back the trucks around the corner. So one of the foremen came out and went to the lead limousine to talk to the chauffeur to ask him to move the limousine. And the limousine behind him, a gentleman got out just like Odd Job. He was like a roly-poly type guy. The suit was 2 sizes too small, and he walked like a sumo wrestler. So to my thinking, that had to be a Chinese gentleman that walked over to find out what my foreman wanted from the other chauffeur.
Mm-hmm.
And this foreman remembers the whole situation. He remembers the guy. He remembers all the limousines. So there's another witness. There's dozens of men that have this buried, and I think they should be informed, because a lot of them I know have passed away. But I think the ones that are still alive should be informed, so they can make a judgment call on whether they want to go there or they don't want to go there.
Exactly. I just want to remind our listeners, we are opening up the phone lines right now. If you want to call in, 855-472-5483. And once again, 855-472-5483. So don't be shy. Call in, ask Yancy a question. He would love to answer that for you. They are open right now if you'd like to give us a call. Let me ask you this, Yancy. Are you thinking about perhaps writing your own book? I think you should.
A lot of times people tell me I should write a book, and I think it's because they just want me to stop talking about it. No, you should write a book. Just shut up. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Because in the first couple of years, I got to tell you, Tracie, I could have emptied out auditoriums or catering halls. If they had another affair, they could have rented me out to come in to talk to people to get them to leave. I mean, I would talk to people, and good people, friends I've known for years. I know they were listening, but behind their eyes, I could hear them screaming, "Taxi, taxi!" They wanted to get away. They wanted to get away from the conversation. They just did not want to go there. So it has been trying when it comes to friends and loved ones, even, to be heard. When please don't talk about that. People think you're crazy. Sorry, I can't help it.
Yeah, but we're at that time now where, like I said, we have this report coming out from the the government so that the Pentagon can release this. Everything's happening at the moment around UFOs. It's a big subject. It's covered on all the media. If not every week, every day, something is in the news. This subject is at the forefront. I mean, CNN have covered this so many times, as all other news channels, Fox and all the rest of it. So I think it would be a great time for you to write this. But we have a caller on the line here for you, and this is Ronald. And hello, Ronald. What is your question? Fire away to Yancy.
Hello to Tracie and Yancy. Good show. Thank you for
Thank you.
The show tonight. And I had a question about the telling of the story, the sharing of the information. Do you find it easier today than it has been at the time it happened even? Do you find it easier today than in the past?
Oh, okay. No, I've always found it easy to talk about. The only way it's easier now is I put more pieces of the puzzle together so I could speak more coherently about exactly what happened and when it took place and in what order and who was what was there. All of it came together after a couple of years. So after that happened, I felt very comfortable talking about it because I feel people should know about it. It was an incredible thing. It was an incredible moment for the human race, and it's being covered up. And I think if I don't talk about it, who will? I mean, luckily I remembered without hypnosis, and the other men that came forward, they came forward of their own volition. I mean, they're very decent, credible men, and they're just as curious and want to know what's going on as you, me, and everybody else.
That's right. Thank you, Ronald.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Good question.
It's a great question. Yeah. And like I said, everything is coming out now with this subject. It's at the forefront of all the news channels. People are talking about it. Listen, seeing an object in the sky is one thing, Yancy, but when we talk about who's piloting these crafts and we're talking about these beings and abductions, that's a whole nother thing. And I cannot see the government talking about any of that. I can't see that ever happening, nor of the implants that go in human beings that the suspected alien implants. None of that would be talked about.
Something that I hear all the time is, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Why don't they just stop, come by and say hello? They can't do that. They cannot do that. And that's why when people start telling me stories about, well, we were in a room with them and hanging out, no. They are so traumatic to your brain and system. You cannot rhyme or reason anything. I doubt if you could carry on a conversation because you'd be shaking just from the fact that it's a reality, which it is. And that they just can't land. I think the way they're making contact is the way it has to be made. And they say abduction. I don't know. I consider them human ambassadors. I know you're not asked if I could go. They just take you. But I don't think there's any other way for them to make contact. They cannot show themselves in mass because it would cause a panic. Steven Spielberg got it totally correct. Without them attacking, just showing up is the type of panic it would ensue, because it's just too much of a shock.
Yeah, and talking about movie and Steven Spielberg, I think this would make an absolutely phenomenal movie. This would be so amazing if a movie producer, someone like Spielberg, would take this, run with it, and make it happen and create the most amazing movie of all times.
Can I tell you a short story?
Go on.
That's one of the things with Bud that upset him. I'm very creative, and I reached out to Spielberg. And when I told Richard Dolan how I did it, he said to me, "If I ever upset you, please give me a chance to apologize." Because the way I approached Spielberg was, what happened was his personal staff wrote a letter to Bud Hopkins saying the way they thought Bud Hopkins approached him, not me. And they wrote a letter to Bud Hopkins saying, this is a very unorthodox way to approach Mr. Spielberg with a film play, which it was. I won't say how I did it because I have a great deal of respect for the man. But I did reach out to Spielberg, and believe it or not, I think it was part of the inspiration for a remake of The War of the Worlds, Because
Yes.
in my article, I wrote about how the people look like crazed birds in a cage. And that scene was definitely in the movie, along with the fact when it first came out, I saw it in IMAX. And so it must have been a director's cut. But the first thing you see on the film is the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge. And then it pulls all the way back to Staten Island where Tom Cruise is working on a forklift. But I do believe he did put there was some of the inspiration, which is fine with me. There was a TV show called Threshold, which was made about me. I mean, the producers who don't need to make any more money than they already do said that the show is grounded in reality. It's very now, and the characters are all prototypes. Now, those three producers met me 3 years before. They approached me. I didn't know who they were, but they approached me at a fundraiser for Bud Hopkins. And they were questioning me about this event. So the only way they could have known about me was if they saw the interview I did with Hopkins. And they wanted me to tell that one of them had just gotten married and his wife's name was Victoria. And they wanted me to tell Victoria what was going on. And Dave Jacobs was there listening like he always seemed to be. And I said to Victoria, did you ever hear the song Victoria by the Kinks? And she said no. So I was going on about that while they were trying to tell me to convince her about what I saw. How do you tell somebody and convince them I saw this? I said, you can't. And I was amazed that she never heard the song Victoria. So that was the conversation. But they made a TV series called Threshold. And it dealt with, I was Peter, what's his name? The little person. Anyway, he was one of the characters, and his name was Ramsey, and he's really Yancy. But Peter Dinklage.
Okay.
And Peter Dinklage isn't Peter Dinklage. I mean, he has another name. That's not his real name. And the truth of it is, Yancy Spence isn't my name. It's only half my name. My first name is Spencer, but I like being called Spence. So Yancy Spence is the only lie I've ever publicly said that my name is Yancy Spence. And that's a half-truth because Spence is my real name.
And I love it. I love it. I want to pull up this drawing here because we didn't do it earlier. This is a scene that from inside the craft, I believe, of Bobby.
Yes, no, that is Mr. E-Man.
Oh, Mr. E-Man.
Mr. E-Man drew that. They were watching a film. That's what the screen is. And they saw that he wasn't sleeping. He was faking that he was sleeping. So I guess they came up and then zapped him. I mean, tased him or whatever. I guess they do that to protect the person and to protect themselves. I mean, that if they're afraid the human being is going to go berserk in the ship, maybe that's what they have to do. I don't think they do it to hurt you, but if they think you might get out of control, that's probably how they control you.
Yeah, and did he say what he was seeing on that screen? What was being shown?
He was seeing fires and destruction and earthquakes and floods, all scenes of disasters.
Yeah, they seem to do that a lot with abductees. They take them, they show them disasters on a screen, things happening to the earth. It's just so typical. What do you think is the reason that they are taking people, Yancy?
I don't know, Trace. I don't know. I really don't know. I can make guesses like everybody else, but we'll never know. I guess they're the only ones that do know.
Do you want to make a guess?
Well, some people say they're trying to rebreed and they need our DNA. Some people say they want to capture the planet, but I believe if they wanted the planet, they could have done that years ago. I don't know. I have no special thing that I believe they're doing it. It could be the nuclear thing. I mean, the fact that we're exploding nuclear weapons and screwing up not only our atmosphere, but obviously they're worried about us taking him into space. That could be it. They think we shouldn't be playing with those. I don't think we should be either. So we agree on that.
Right. And in regards to Lou Elizondo, just getting back to him for a moment, what do you think about him? Do you think this is all accurate information that he's speaking about with these UAPs?
See, that's a hard one to answer. I know this man is helping to defend this country, and I have a lot of respect for that. So as the reasons as to why he would be following me or doing what he's doing, I really can't say. he just hired this lawyer, Sheenan, I believe, Daniel Sheenan, and he's a well-known lawyer. So if he needs a lawyer, right then and there tells me he's got some problems. So I don't know who they're with or what they're about, but I'm glad somebody is out there speaking about it. I mean, you cannot let this go any longer. I said this years ago, it's a cancer that has to be removed. And I think Obama heard, because in his first speech at West Point, he said the Taliban was a cancer that has to be removed. So maybe he's echoing my thoughts about how I said this has to be removed. I do know that on one of the radio shows I did, I spoke about how the regal golden eagle has to climb out of a nest, unfold her wings, and take a deep breath of the truth. And when a couple of weeks later, when Obama was inaugurated, there was an eagle up on the podium, and I had never seen that before. So I'm pretty sure, yes, I'm pretty sure John Podesta and the people around him are aware of who I am and what I've been saying. I just feel if I connect the dots, that's where it goes.
And Obama has been very open about this subject, that there are strange things in our skies and we don't know what they are.
Yes.
He's been very forthcoming. Biden, not so much. You ask a question and he just walks off. He doesn't answer it. What do you think's going on there, Yancy?
I think you're never going to get the truth from the politicians in this day and age. Who's going to believe the politicians anyway, or the military? You know, it's really hard to know who is credible and who isn't. That's why if you use a scientific experiment to get some kind of answers, like I did, I think that's the only way you're going to solve this. Science is the way, not politicians and what other sources you could get, but they talk about physical trace evidence. What are you going to say? Everything they find, they say, well, it could be made of this, could be made of that. And then you take another serious military person, Pennington from Rendlesham Forest. Why would that man make up what he said about the craft that he touched and the binary code that he got? Why would he make up such a ridiculous thing?
That's right.
You have to give some people credibility just because they're credible.
That's right. It's time for the government to come clean with this, and I think speak out that there are things in our skies. I heard a preliminary report of them saying that they're not extraterrestrial, but the thing is, if they're going to say it's not extraterrestrial, Yancy, they've got to show us, or tell us, I should say, of why it's not extraterrestrial. They've got to back up what they say. Whatever answer they give, they've got to back that up, haven't they?
Yes, they have to give some kind of evidence to support what they're saying. I would think that with anything.
Absolutely.
You're going to make some positive statements, you have to back it up with data, evidence, data, information that shows, yes, this is true.
That's right. Today, how you feel today about what happened some 32 years ago. I know we've talked about Spielberg. Do you think you would approach Spielberg again to try and get this off the ground in some kind of a movie?
I think a movie is a little bit down the road. I'd like to see the people who say they're experts and informed about this start discussing this Rockefeller initiative, the evidence and data I brought forward, that Bud brought forward. People like Dave Jacobs should comment. Leslie Kean should comment. These people should comment on whether I'm credible or not credible, and can we follow this information?
Exactly.
I don't know what to say anymore. If you know.
Well, listen, we've had Roswell, we've had the ship that came down in Arizona in 1953, but we have this event here right in the middle of New York City, in front of everybody. Like you said,
it was done intentionally. It was for everyone to see, and that alone should say something.
Exactly. Wow, Yancy, we have come to the end of the show for tonight. It's been an amazing 2 hours talking to you, my friend, and getting this getting this whole phenomenal event out to the public that's been suppressed for 32 years. It's an historical event for sure, one that you won't ever forget.
You said it would go quickly. It certainly did, Trace. It's been a pleasure. It really has.
And the pleasure was all mine. Absolutely. So thank you, Yancy. We appreciate you, my friend. A big thank you to my producer, Bill Skywatcher, and to everyone listening. Keep your eyes to the skies, because no matter where you live in the world, you just might witness something like this event that Yancy, I should say, witnessed that night or morning, early hours of the morning on November the 30th of 1989. And thank you for tuning in, as you do every week. We couldn't do this show without you. Thank you so much. Please check out the Tracie Austin Show collection of TV podcasts that we have on KGRA. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember, folks, always keep an open heart and an open mind. Until next time, be safe.